All right, so we have our second lesson in building a network. The first lesson obviously was on the internet. So, these slides up here, hopefully, you didn't have any problems with using the internet simulator. Basically, you were essentially just making a chat room. And kind of going back and forth and seeing how the messages were getting converted and more or less just seeing how this little chat room worked. So, obviously, a digital network, the internet itself is a digital network. But today's activity is going to be what is known as an unplugged activity. If you could see me, I put up air quotes. So, an unplugged activity is one where you don't really use your computers at all. So, hopefully, you are watching this at home before class, um, so that I can, or that you can bring in the necessary materials. If not, not a big deal. And I also don't remember if I mentioned at the end of the previous lesson to bring in strings. I feel like I might have, but um, if I didn't bring in strings to class tomorrow, if you don't have strings, somebody might have strings. Okay? But what you're going to be doing is you are going to be exploring what a network actually is and sort of seeing what the physical limitations of a network were. Um, Obviously, yesterday, prompt, something for you to consider. What are the potential problems with the setup where each of you were simply connected to one other person by a single wire? All right, so today we are going to be creating a human network. So you're not going to be using any of the widgets or modules or anything like that. If we go to code.org, you can see that this is the only thing, this is the only lesson essentially. It's a check for understanding in lesson two. So you are going to be writing about redundant paths, so describing two different paths that a message could take from person A to person D here. Free response questions. So after you've finished with all the activities in class, then you can work on this, or even if you want to answer it right now, totally fine. But what you are going to be doing is you're going to be going through a series of challenges. So I'm trying to remember which challenges. Oh, it was the representations of text with binary. So that's when we were sort of learning about abstraction and how we can use binary to represent text. And so we had some text messages like the letter C space YA space later. So see you later. All right, it was all lowercase. And you all came up with a coding system essentially to convey that message to your partner, um, just using numbers. You could not use any other symbol. You were only using numbers, no numbers and no letters. And then there were additional challenges where all of a sudden these messages contained actual numbers. These messages contained capital letters, they contained symbols. And so now we started to have to think about how our own numbering system would have to be adjusted to represent these different types of messages. That's when I brought up the ASCII sort of text chart. Essentially, we saw the original ASCII text chart, which I think goes from 33 to 127. Again, for whatever reason on the slides, they only go to 126. 127 is the delete key, and then 0 to 32. 0 to 31 off the top of my head. Those are all sort of like command keys essentially. So the only ones that actually do anything in terms of text were 33 to 126, and then 127 is the delete key, and then you also have the extended ASCII chart, which then went to ASCII codes 255, which we know is 8 bits worth of binary, essentially. So 255 representing 256 total integers. Okay, so what you're going to be doing with this human network, we have a challenge that sort of expands in difficulty. So set up rule for all challenges. So only 2 people can be connected by a single string. Okay, so you cannot grab the middle of another string and consider that a connection via a single wire. It is one end of the string connecting to another end of the string. Okay, and you can be connected to multiple people at the same time via multiple strings. Okay, so that is totally possible. Okay, so for your first challenge, you are going to create a network where everyone can speak directly to everyone else. Okay, so creating this network, you are basically completely free to do this. Now, as you are following along, this is the only one that I want to talk about right now because I don't want to necessarily spoil the other challenges, but this is the first one that you'll start with, and then I will sort of skip the challenges on the slides here, and then obviously you will see them in class, and then you will work together to sort of figure out how these different networks work and the limitations that are being imposed on you, essentially. So I know one of the challenges basically is asking you, or I'm pretty sure one of the challenges is asking you to make the most efficient network possible, the most cost-effective network possible. But anyway, I kind of want to skip to these definition slides just so you have them and so you can see them. But work through these network challenges in class. Okay, record your findings, reflect on them, talk to each other about networks, like what is a network and how does this relate to that internet simulator activity that you did last class. Okay, so here are some definitions for you. So again, you can see down here it says that the slide is skipped in slideshow mode. But here's some definitions for you that, obviously if you have these slides, you should have access to them, but I did want to show these definitions to you. So you have a computing device, computing system, computing network, a path, bandwidth on this slide, and then basically how would you use these words, okay, so those definitions to describe today's activity. So another thing that you should sort of reflect on, whether it is in class with each other, with your partners, or just with people around the class, just have a discussion about how any of these things relate to today's activity. All right, and again, you have the same definitions again, more or less. Okay, so that is Unit 2, Lesson 2. So like I said, if you are watching this before class, bring in some strings. Strings of yarn would probably be the best option for you. But if you don't have that, try your best to visualize things. You can use pens, pencils, anything that sort of represents a connection between you and anybody else. All right. Well, that is it for Unit 2, Lesson 2. Or I suppose the next video will be Lesson 3, which is the need for addressing.